data, speed, and choice.
This is real interesting.
Welcome back, America. I'm here with Ben Domenech. I'm a big fan of his. He's the smartest guy I know without a TV show. You're the editor-at-large of The Spectator, as you know. I want to ask you a question. You're a very, very smart gentleman. You look at the Democrat Party, you look what they've done to the economy, and their answer is to do more of the same, borrow and spend. They've destroyed the border. You've got horrendous things going on the border, the kind of inhumanity that's taking place there. You look at what they've done to women's sports, or women generally. You look what's going on with the energy industry, how they're trying to destroy it. You look what's going on in our classrooms. You look at what's going on with law enforcement. How do they even have 30% of the support of the American people? What is the purpose of the Democrat Party?
Well, first off, thank you so much for your kind words and your compliments. I think in the larger scheme of things, we have to understand that this coalition that the Democrats have represented over the years really started to fall apart when they started to lean so much more heavily and more honestly, I feel, into these culture war issues as they've done over the last several decades. You know, back in the 1990s, you look back at the Democrats who were cutting deals with the Republican majority under Newt Gingrich, and you see a lot of people whose views, frankly, on a host of the issues that you mentioned would really place them within the coalition of the right today. Even if they would be, you know, conservative Democrats, a handful that still exist, like Joe Manchin, those people have been completely run out of the left coalition. And it's happened in front of us over the past few decades, in large part because of their rejection of a number of things that have been so much at the center of American life. I think, you know, mostly, of course, of religion. The fact that the Democratic Party today really is at odds with so many religious believers across the country is something that they don't seem to have a problem with. It's almost like they're invested in America becoming a less Judeo-Christian country. They just assumed it would happen. And they continue to be frustrated when they run into problems like Hispanic voters still having religious beliefs and having those beliefs affect their views on culture war issues, especially when it comes to saying that boys can be girls, or having questions about abortion on demand, or really not going along with the Democratic agenda when it comes to suing the Little Sisters of the Poor, or trying to force businesses that are led by Christians to kowtow to their liberal leftist ideology. And one of the other things that I think has happened is they have rejected the portion of their coalition that was always dedicated to the idea of disagreement and free speech being something that was valuable. You think of secularists like Bill Maher, for instance, who really are not, you know, in any way people of the right. They basically just have the same views that your average ACLU donor did back in the 1990s. But the ACLU of today, it's about trans agenda. It is about enforcement of all sorts of authoritarian norms when it comes to preventing speech and the like. It's a completely, a break with the kind of agenda that they used to have in the past, and it's one that leads them to try to cancel those who they disagree with. We saw just this week the effort to cancel comedian Dave Chappelle. Again, someone who is very much, a liberal. He is not someone of the right, but because he offends people with some of the jokes that he makes about the trans agenda and the way that, we've changed the way that we talk about family and society so rapidly in the course of service to this radical leftist agenda, a Marxist agenda. The fact that he takes issue with that and makes fun of it is so infuriating to them that they seek to cancel him, to prevent him, a black comedian, a prominent one from Washington, D.C., from being able to speak out. Now, he has the ability, because he's wealthy and because he has such a popular presence and a fan base, to push back against that. But most people don't, and the left knows that. They don't just want to have people who are at the top of the list of cultural influencers kowtow to them because of trying to affect the discussion. They also want to put fear in Americans across the country that they won't be able to express themselves, that they'll go along with this leftist agenda, a radical one. And I think that one of the big things that the Democratic Party is about today is that level of leftist authoritarianism, seeking to shut down anyone who will take opposition to them because they truly believe the arc of history favors them, that they are our moral betters, that they have a new religion that we all have to bow to. And unfortunately, Unfortunately for them, America is still America, and Americans don't really get along with people telling them, ordering around, bossing them around, and telling them what to do. And the contingent of Americans who stand up, the people who take issue with them and understand the crisis that they represent for our country, they are ones who are not going to be easily moved. They are not just on the right. They are across the country. They are political independents and others. And I think that's a big part of the reason that Democrats have lost the plot. They're doing all these things desperately, trying to hold on to power, trying to use it to the nth degree before they get pushed out this November. And it's almost a last gasp for boomer leftism who believe that they have had a charted path toward the future and are now infuriated to find that there's some Americans who don't want to go that same way.
I'd say that's the best synopsis I've heard in a long time. And when we come back, Ben Domenech, the Democrat Party doesn't play inside the constitutional borders anymore. In other words, in order to push its cultural radicalism, they have a problem with the Constitution. They use it when they think it will help them, but they intend to destroy it, even the Bill of Rights. And those who wrote it, what they're doing to the homes of Jefferson and Madison, undermining our entire history, embracing critical race theory, indoctrinating our children. So the question for you when we return is the Democrat Party a party for good, or is this a party that is a kamikaze operation against our constitutional republic? We'll be right back.
Let's fast forward up.
Going to be hurting. Is widely viewed as a liberty and Levin.
There were always that they were going to stop there, were always telling themselves a lie and telling the country a lie. The reason that they need to go after the founding to such a degree, to go after Thomas Jefferson, to go after George Washington and James Madison, to undermine the founding as we have understood it commonly as Americans for the vast majority of our history, is that they want to establish themselves as the new people on those pillars. They want to be able to say, your new ideal is me. Look to me for your guidance. A perfect example of this, as my colleague at The Spectator, Doug Murray, has pointed out in his book and in his writings, is Ibram X. Kendi, a very radical leftist who may be familiar to some in your audience, who is the king of these anti-racist approaches. He's had, all these different projects approved, backed, to the tune of millions of dollars by people like the former head of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, to basically make an argument to America and to the highest level of people going through higher education and corporate America and the like, that we need to reject all of these things, and that capitalism itself, the American capitalist system, which has lifted people up from poverty, which has been of enormous boon to to humanity around the world, is something that must be destroyed, and it must be replaced with a Marxist system in which the decisions about who gets what are made by him, literally by him, and people like him. An expert class, in keeping with the progressivism of Woodrow Wilson and the like, that distributes across America and across the world everything that we have in terms of our property, everything that we earn in terms of our bread. And they also want, of course, to take over the minds of the young, of people who are rising through our public school systems. It's a myth to say that, this is a battle that is happening just now. The pandemic revealed to people, I think a lot of parents across the country, that this is something that had already been taken over, these public school institutions, by a very radical leftist agenda, which is consistent with the kinds of things that Kendi says. But if you're going to stand up on a pedestal, if you're going to say, you must worship me and no one that came before me, then you must eradicate everything that says, from the Enlightenment values combined with our Judeo-Christian faith, that provided such a great founding for America. You have merged within those two things something that made America exceptional, truly exceptional as a nation. You had the freedom and the liberty, the individual rights of people that came out of the Enlightenment and out of Christian faith and out of the Judeo-Christian understanding of our relationship with the Almighty, formed in a new way by our founders who took the lessons of those principles and applied them through our Declaration, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, the Federalist Papers, and our initial founding documents. documents. Those have been incredibly powerful. They've charted a path forward for us. They've allowed us to succeed in the way that we have as a nation. And the left today is dedicated to their destruction because they understand what a danger they represent to this radical leftist agenda and to the Marxist way that they want to remake our country and the world.
Very well put. And the Democrat Party is the vessel through which they are operating now, it seems to me, as you pointed out earlier. And that is, this party stands for all of these different forces and elements, and there's nothing too extreme, nothing too absurd, nothing too insane, to the point where we even have a president who nominated somebody who's now on the Supreme Court who wouldn't define what she is. So they celebrate her as the first black woman, and then she won't define what a woman is. So you actually have to embrace a reality that's not a reality and just embrace their beliefs as reality, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mark, I had incident to rewatch that old classic culture war speech given by Pat Buchanan back in 1992. One that I think was, a signature moment in recognizing this culture war that the left was undertaking against America. And he talks very early in that speech about how the Democrats in their convention that year were engaged in a cross-dressing act, that they were pretending to not be these radical leftists, that Bill Clinton and those around him who were running in that year were pretending to be something that they were not. This is the difference between then and now. They stopped pretending. They stopped pretending to be, a pro-American party, one that, honored the flag, respected the Bible, or supported cops and firemen in the military, and they started to be honest about what they really believe, that they believe the children belong to them and not to the family, and that all of these things need to be eradicated. The Democratic Party right now is a coalition that is incredibly, I think, shrinking. It's going to go through a wilderness period, and it's going to be very dangerous during that period, I think, in a lot of unexpected ways. And so the conservatives, but also those who are not even conservative, but just allied on these issues, need to be prepared for how radical the left is going to be when they respond to losing, when the voters turn away from the radicalism of their agenda.
As they say, from your mouth to God's ears. Ben Domenech, I want to thank you very, very much for all you do. You're a wonderful young thinker in this movement for liberty. God bless you.
Thank you.